I'm aware this is most likely your first time hearing me hello. I grew up down south among the palm trees with Mickey Mouse and a basketball hoop in front of our house. I wanted to be Michael Jordan until I was 13, and to this day, Space Jam is the greatest movie these blue eyes have ever seen. I'd rather have a cheeseburger than fame, and most days I'm called the wrong name. I'm the second son of my father. I stand 4 inches taller than my mother. My hero is my brother. In late one December, I said I do to a grace-filled goddess with eyes so beautiful they could shrink giants. And late last night, I was sent a gif or a gif while half asleep next to the other whole of me, and she couldn't see me giggling under the sheets as I watched a dog run into a glass door over and over and over and over. We've talked about getting a dog of our own, and we will name him Pancake. And I still have a hard time being present because I'm stuck in the past and I'm fixed on the future. I don't know what it's like to live with no regrets or without dreams, and I write poetry because I can't sing, and when I dance it looks like I'm trying to kill a bee without getting stung. And I read these words from a notebook because I cannot memorize, but I have become mesmerized by how ink changes a page. I'm no Whitman or Poe, Dickinson or Angelo, Wheezy or Taylor Swift, but I write to remain, putting the pen to the paper to keep from causing a ripple in a rift. Writing, it's the cheapest form of therapy, saving my pocket singles and dimes so I can buy coffee to fuel this dream, sipping myself closer to clarity. And I'm chasing the heels of 33, and I thought I'd have it all figured out by now, but I've got more questions than answers, and all my answers, they create fresh questions, a constant give and take, a swirling surrounding the pounding within, but locked within. Faith outweighs both, pulling me closer to a forever, a restful peace growing beyond the deep, and deep down inside, hope pumps through my veins, coursing creativity, causing a landslide of possibilities, reminding me that it's better for us to stay here together than to leave alone. And I've been someone that I haven't liked, but for all I don't know, I know that grace kills guilt, grabbing my hand and leading me to a blank page to write with freedom and newfound glory. And I don't have all the right words to say, but I've got a lot of words to say. And some days I think that I say too much, but most days I know that I think too much. Overthinking. Anybody else get it, overthinking? It's this constant moving within, the shaking and shifting of thoughts, getting myself lost within what-ifs, mixing myself up with mixtapes of mess-ups, replaying the wreckage of the memories that I've tried to lay to rest. And I'm second-guessing what I know to be true, and I know that I don't know much, but I've come to know that kindness isn't overrated, and telling you donuts are delicious is an understatement. I know I don't want to die with my eyes on a screen or get stuck somewhere in between hate and greed. I know our greatest response is often silence. And if you're quiet enough, you might be able to spread it, but I also know if something is beautiful, we should speak it. I know that weird and wonderful have more in common than just the W, and I know that learning takes patience, and patience takes learning. I know there's no shame in surrendering, and I believe humility requires community, and community is why we push through to the other side. And I know that the two sweetest words are welcome home. Welcome home. Well, we'll come home and we will welcome you with arms and smiles wide. Well, we'll come home and we will wash the dust from your feet and give you something to eat. Well, we'll come home. We've been waiting for you. Welcome home. This is when you clap. Just a little bit. Okay.
As I close the door, great job, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
There's no water in this building, apparently. And so they just told us that that's getting fixed. So probably if you need water or to go to the bathroom.
Don't, because you can't.
Yeah.
Sorry, Tim.
No, shoot, man. Anybody else have an announcement? Well, my name is Tanner Olson, and this is what I do. I write poetry, I share poetry, and I'm just happy to be here. I'm an author and poet living in Nashville, Tennessee with my wife Sarah, and we did get a dog, and his name is Pancake. We got him the day the pandemic started. So I was supposed to be in Nebraska for a week, and then our breeder, I'm allergic to dogs. We got a bougie dog. He's very fluffy, but they were like, you have to come pick him up now. So the pandemic kind of worked out in my favor for a little bit, but not in general. We're not going to get into it. I grew up in Oviedo, Florida, so technically that makes me a Florida man, and then I went to Concordia, Wisconsin for college. So I went from Florida to Wisconsin, so you know that God had to have said something. for that to have happened. And I've lived a bunch of other places, but now we live in Nashville. In the past, I've served as a youth leader, a program director at Camp Luther in northern Wisconsin. I worked as a communications and community director at a church plant in Austin, Texas for a couple of years. At one point, I worked at Chick-fil-A, but that was really just to secure my spot in heaven. So I'm good. I'll probably see some of you all there, which is good. I spend most of my days writing and sharing poetry, sharing stories online and for audiences across the United States. And so this morning, what I'd like to do is just share a couple of poems. I'll ask you a few questions that you can kind of think about. I won't be asking for crowd participation because I think that's pretty rude. So I'm not going to do that to you. But while putting this talk together, this time together, I asked my wife. My wife asked me like what I was going to be sharing. She's like, "What are you going to be talking about?" And I gave her like a typical like marriage answer, like something super jumbled, not really well thought out, something how this was not going to be like any other talk at Best Practices because I'm an artist and we do things differently, and it's going to be a time of rest and reflection. And I told her that I'd be sharing some poetry, and that wasn't a good enough answer because then she asked another question as if the first one wasn't hard enough, and she's like, "It's Best Practices, so like what practice are you going to give them to take home?" And to me that sounds like homework. And I don't give homework. And the truth is, I'm not going to give a talk like maybe a pastor or a theologian or someone like a leadership guru might give you. And there's nothing wrong with those talks. That's just not me. And I think we hear a lot of those. So I wanted to offer maybe something a little bit different, sharing hope maybe in a different way, or allowing you to just find a place just to rest and breathe. Because like we were talking about, and we'll talk about a little bit, the last 2 years have been something. And so if we can make this time just a little bit where you can take some things home with you, where you can rest and reflect, and maybe something I say will be for you, or maybe there'll be something that I say that you can share with somebody else along the way. I'm not going to give you like 5 simple steps for a reflective life. I don't have that. But my hope is that you do leave here feeling a little bit more hopeful and encouraged, that you feel less alone. So as we talk, I'm going to focus really on 4 things. Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that's about right. Okay. Nope, that slide doesn't exist either. Okay, the 4 things are slow down, lean in, hold fast, and go on. And I'll be kind of walking through those things as we move forward. But now that you know those things, please don't leave. That would be rude. But our conversation isn't going to be one of self-help or morality, but these 4 things have shaped and changed just how I navigate the world and live out my faith. This is just something that one person has learned by a few risks, a few steps back, a couple steps forward, prayers answered in ways that, well, I never saw coming, little sleep, and several hard conversations, seasons, and transitions. So to begin, I'd like to share another poem with you from my latest book called Walk a Little Slower. And it goes like this. I think today I'll walk a little slower and breathe a little deeper. I'll leave my phone face down inside and give my eyes a rest to see beauty beyond a screen. I'll grab a light jacket so I can still feel the cold wind hold your hand until it gets sweaty, and I'll let go, but, well, I'll never let go. I'll walk below and between shadows, cut through the field, cross the street when the car is clear. Today, I want to find myself beneath the limbs of the trees, and later on below a few million stars, maybe we'll see a dog, or bump into old friends, or both. And I'm not counting steps or miles, but I'm just walking because for now, I can. And I don't know what the future holds, if my days left are long or short, or, well, you get it. Maybe grief is around the corner, or a missed call on my face-down phone back inside. Maybe there's good news in my inbox, or a miracle waiting in the welcome of the next month. And in the morning, I'll sit a little longer and breathe a little deeper. I'll watch the light make its way through the dark morning, because the light, it always finds a way. And I'll remind myself that life won't always look the way that it does. Change is coming, and it might even be here. I'll remember the steps forward and the steps back that led me to where I am. And before I begin to move these feet once again, I'll slowly breathe in grace and exhale peace, knowing that every piece of me is here to be. And whatever may become, well, for now, I'll walk a little slower and breathe a little deeper. Because right now, I'm alive. And everything is okay. And that's what I'm learning to tell myself these days. Everything is okay. It's not perfect. And that's okay. Everything is okay. It's not perfect, and that's okay. That's what I've been trying to tell myself for the last few years. Because ministry wasn't perfect, relationships, health, money, let's talk about that, right? wasn't perfect. Life, dreams, and just the world in general just seems pretty far from perfect. But during the lows and the uncertainty, and there's always uncertainty, I came up with the last line of this poem, that everything is okay. It's not perfect, and that's okay. And that's not like a blanket statement. There are some situations and seasons where it's not perfect and it's not okay. But some days, I don't know how or why, but there is something deep within me that continues to echo what I can only describe as hope and truth. That I come back to this, that we are seen, that we are known, that we are loved. And yes, I understand. That sounds like something that Hobby Lobby would print on some reclaimed wood, sell it for $80 with a 40% off coupon. Like, I know that. We've seen it on t-shirts, that you are known, that you are loved, and that you are seen. But it's true. Like, those things are true. It's not perfect, and I'm learning that it's okay, just like I'm learning to slow down. I was 8 years old the first time that my grandma told me to slow down. My brother and I, we were 30 minutes from our house spending a weekend with my grandma and grandpa in DeLand, Florida. And I can't remember why we were there, but that's where we were. And when you're 8, it's your job just to kind of go with the flow, to say please and thank you. And when you're feeling brave, to eat the vegetables that are on your plate without putting up a fight. I often put up a fight. And on our first day with our grandparents, they took us to KFC for dinner. Do you remember KFC in the 90s? Oh, look at that. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we were told that this was dinner and not a snack. And as a kid, I believed that KFC was what kings and queens ate at their banquet halls. I can't remember like who suggested we go there to eat, but if we're being truthful, it had to have been me, because I've always had a sophisticated palate. My brother would kind of eat whatever you put in front of him, but I was a difficult child and adult. I was a picky eater, only wanting to eat what can best be described as fair food. And to this day, fried chicken tops my list of favorites, closely followed by biscuits and mashed potatoes, all of which are served at KFC. And when it came to food, Colonel Sanders knew exactly what he was doing. When it came to health, maybe not so much, but we're not here to talk about that. But the inviting scent of fried chicken wrapped its arms around as we walked through the doorway. A bell rang as we entered, only to signal that we had made the correct decision. And I stopped and I looked around as if we had just entered a sacred place. God is here, I said. I didn't, because that would have been really weird, especially for an 8-year-old. And our grandpa, he told us that we could get whatever we would like. Challenge accepted. As I ordered, I pointed to photo after photo, remembering to say please and thank you, purposely leaving off the vegetables, unless you consider mashed potatoes to be a vegetable, in which case, half the plate was vegetables. Moments later, he handed me a plate full with these lingering words of, "You got it?" "Oh, buddy, I got it." And I couldn't tell if the concerned look on the employee's face was due to how much food I had ordered, or if I'd be able to safely take my plate from one end of the establishment to the other. And there was no way I was going to drop it. I carefully navigated my way between tables and chairs, and we sat in the coveted corner booth, which there were only open seats because it was 4 o'clock. And while the others ordered, I sat patiently admiring the food that laid before me. It was fried chicken, biscuits, and mashed potatoes. Was I a king? No. But also, yes, I was. I tried to wait, but the intoxicating scent put this spell over me, stealing my self-control and leading me into this moment of weakness. And I started with just a nibble of the crispy skin of a chicken leg. And this led me to shoveling food into my mouth as if I had not eaten in days. Crumbs fell to my already stained t-shirt. My feet were unable to reach the floor. They swung with joy. My torso had bounced back and forth doing the happy dance in my seat. I was living the dream. And as I swallowed my last bite, my grandparents and my brother walked up to the table. And my grandma goes, "Tanner, you know how grandmas say that? I know there's a few grandmas in here. I'm not making any eye contact, but you know how it goes, right?" Chills went up and down my body. "Where'd your food go? We didn't even say grace yet." And I wanted to tell her grandma I had been thanking God for every single bite, but I didn't want to push it. So for the next 20 minutes, I just sat there and I watched in silence as the three of them slowly ate their 4 o'clock dinner. And it was painfully slow. Like, my grandma continued to lecture me about how eating fast wasn't good for me and how it was rude deep before the others had even gotten their food. And every few minutes she would say how I was going to feel sick. And she was right. That I was sick of hearing her talk about how I finished my food first, how I won. Didn't mention that. And every now and again, my body would do that, like, that jerk reaction of, like, the burp, where it's like, I made a mistake again. And then my brother, he sat there and laughed. He was laughing at me because he always knew better than I did. And if my brother was best known for something, it was for doing things correctly. And I was known for my impulsive behavior. Every few bites, he would announce how good his food was, mentioning that he was going to savor every bite as if it was his last. He knew all the right things to say. And I thought like my scolding was over, but my grandma continued to tell me time and time again that I needed to learn how to slow down. To slow down. And I know those two words were spoken with love and sincerity, but I couldn't help but feel guilty. She went on to tell me how life was not meant to be rushed through, but enjoyed. And I've had those two words rolling around in my head ever since she spoke them to me again and again that afternoon in the KFC. And there are days when I remember them, but more often than not, I don't. They're far from my mind. Sometimes it is the truth that is the hardest to remember. And I've rushed through meals and moments. I've dreamed of being older when I was younger and younger when I was older. I've blown through conversations and celebrations and emotions. But those two words, they continue to remain, to slow down. Last year would have been my grandma's 101st birthday. And in her honor, I am trying to learn and listen to slow down. To slow down. The other day I woke up before the alarm sounded, and I crawled out of bed and I slowly walked to the kitchen. I put the coffee on and watched the window as the sun began to make its way above my head. The light seeped through the cracks in the blinds, filling the house with hope. And I opened my Bible and I read a psalm or two, and I wondered how often my grandma would do this. Just sit and to wait and watch, to rest and remember. She was good at finding time to just slow down. And I made toast. I love toast. And I waited until it was golden brown, just the way I wanted it, before pulling it out of the toaster. And I put too much Land O'Lakes across the top, smeared it all over, just like my grandma would. And I took one bite, savoring every crumb. And no longer was I swinging my legs underneath the booth of a KFC, but I was doing the happy dance. Slow down. And Grandma was right. Life was not meant to be rushed through, but enjoyed, just like a plate of fried chicken, biscuits, and mashed potatoes. Is anyone else bad at slowing down? Okay, I was hoping that at least one person would, or else that story would have been just for you. Would have been just for us. But sometimes I just need to be reminded that it is okay to slow down. And I don't think that I'm clearly not alone in this. And when I read through the Gospels, Jesus' words seem to always invite others to slow down and to rest and to be present. What is 3 things that I am pretty terrible at? It's almost as if Jesus is saying that with him, with me, there is a better way to live. That there is a better way to live. And I need to be reminded to Sabbath and be still and not rush through every little thing, especially meals. And slowing down has been difficult the last few years. And we've been through it and we're still in it. We're pushed to the edge, presented with question after question, and fear has been shouted, churches have closed, families have broken up. All the things that we've been asked to juggle and carry and do and be have pushed us to breaking points. And for many of us, our way of living has been proven to be unsustainable. We're left tired and wondering if we can keep doing the job that we have been called to do. So, let me ask you this question. Answer it honestly with yourself. But how have the past 2 years been for you? And really, how are you doing? You know those conversations, and you've had 30 of them here, where you're like, hey, how are you doing? And your response is, we're good, we're doing good, we're doing good.
I know, I tell them how I am.
Wrong person. You know how you you go up to somebody, hey, how are you doing? And they're like, I'm doing good. Yeah, okay, wrong person. You know how you go up to somebody and hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great.
Doing great. But on the inside, you're like, it's over, it's ending. How are you doing? And maybe you are thriving, and maybe you think everything is going well or is exciting, or maybe you're just happy to be here, but are dreading the flight home because what is waiting for you is not sunshine and kindness. I'm not embarrassed. I really did get sunburned yesterday. I stand next to Zach, and it was just I'll probably be okay. I grew up in Florida. I wasn't okay. But maybe you're learning to slow down, or maybe you're having the opposite problem and you're learning how to pick up the pace. Maybe you feel stuck or behind, or like everyone is doing better than you. Or maybe you just feel meh. Most days I feel meh. Because life just seems to feel a little bit clunky. And clunky has become one of my new favorite words. As a writer and poet, it is my job to reflect and wonder and lean into the world and humanity. It's a pretty sweet gig, minus the depression, self-doubt, back issues, and crippling comparison, and constant overthinking and little pay. But other than that, it's a pretty sweet gig. And as I have slowed down, I've come to see how important it is for us to reflect and to lean in. And one morning I sat down to write, and I was feeling quite meh. And and very clunky. Life felt heavy, and I began to write, and I wrote a poem called Cake for Breakfast, and it goes like this. I ate the leftover cake from your birthday for breakfast. I had to. I was sad. I know, it wasn't the right choice, but it also wasn't the wrong one. Also, it's Monday. Again. And they never seem to stop arriving, and that's a good thing, or so I'm trying to believe. And halfway through the morning, I found frosting on the outside of my hand, the same place where I would find smudges of green Crayola markers I'd scribble in the grass in my second grade class, back when I looked forward to Mondays, and back when I could have cake for breakfast. I mean, a muffin. But we all know muffins are just morning cake. And before school, I'd have an Otis Spunkmeyer chocolate muffin for breakfast because I didn't like eggs or oatmeal. Something about texture, but really, I just wanted to have cake for breakfast. I mean, a muffin. And today, just like when I was 7, I needed to begin my day with something sweet so I could move my feet, because sometimes you just need to have cake for breakfast. That's the entire poem. Do you clap a little bit? Okay, thank you. We've established a couple of things in this talk so far. Poor eating habits from me. We've discussed KFC. We've talked about cake. And if you're wondering, man, it sounds like this guy's about to talk about feelings next. You would be right. This is all part of leaning in, right? And it's a weird thing to do and a hard thing to do, but I think it's extremely important. One of my favorite bands is a band called New Found Glory. Anyone? Nope, got it. Okay. All right. That's because of me. All right. All right. It's this pop punk band from Florida. They've been around for like 20 years. They write a lot of great songs and then breakup songs. And in one of their songs it says, I can't help how I feel. And it's true. And again, the song is about a breakup. But sometimes, like, I just feel meh. In the church, let's talk about this for a second. The church is doing a better job of talking about mental health and how to continue with hope through seasons of darkness, trouble, and menace. Not menace, but meh-ness. I just made it up. It's gonna work. I'll trademark it. But what I have come to learn is this: yes, I cannot help how I feel, but I've also learned that how I feel does not change the truth, but the truth doesn't always change how I feel. Like, how I feel does not change the truth, but the truth doesn't always change how I feel. Faith, hope, and love always remain. However, sometimes I do just feel sad or lost or confused or unsure or behind. And yes, the truth remains. And as Lutherans, I promised myself I was never going to start a sentence like that in my life, but we're all making changes. It's a brand new world. But as Lutherans, I think we are really good at going deeper in our theology. A gold star for that. Here's some flowers. But we aren't always great at digging deeper with how we feel or what's going on inside of us. And we can get in that discussion later, but that's just kind of, we're really good. We aren't the best at giving our feelings a seat at the table. Now, when it comes to feelings, I don't believe that they should drive the car, but we shouldn't shove them in the trunk. Like, they have a seat in the car, they have a seat at the table, and I think that what is going on inside of us, it allows us to go even deeper with our theology and even deeper in our relationship with Christ, to be able to say, this is how I feel, which is not always a fun sentence to say. It is not fun to say, I feel depressed. I feel on the edge. I feel like I'm behind. It's not fun to say those things. No one wants to say that. They want to say, I feel like we're going to KFC at 4 o'clock. Want to say that. Be excited. Anyways. But what you are feeling and what you are going through, it matters. And the truth, it continues to meet us where we are, and we see this play out when we do the hard work of slowing down and leaning in. We see this when we no longer ignore the pain or the shame or the questions. And for a very long time, I thought that I was only allowed to feel one thing at a time. Like, I really thought that I was only supposed to be happy, right? Because my sins were forgiven, the tomb is empty, and Jesus loves me. I'm only supposed to be happy, and there's nothing to be sad about. Yet, I am. I thought that I could either be this or that. Happy or sad, overwhelmed or free, hurt or whole, peaceful or chaotic. I didn't think that I could be both. But I'm learning that we can hold two emotions at once. That we can stand on the truth and feel more than one thing. That I can be both hopeful and dejected, fulfilled and wanting, exhausted and ready. That we can hold joy and sorrow at the same time. We can hold the hope of forever and the pain of today. And holding two emotions at once is some of the heaviest lifting that we can do. We can hold feelings and truth together, just like we hold hope together. So let me ask you this. In light of what you are feeling, what truths are you holding on to? And also, who are the people that you are holding on to hope with? Now, I'm not talking about like your truths. Have you, like people like, you live your truth? We're not talking about that. We're talking about still capital truth. I don't want to talk about the other thing right now. Because the truth is worth holding fast to. Our truth is worth holding fast to. And there's two things that I've been holding fast to for the last little bit. 2 Corinthians 12 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why for Christ's sake I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong." I feel meh. I guess I just made that German. Or meh. That's more like Hebrew. It's fine. But his grace is still sufficient, right? Like Paul shows us how beautiful it is to hold hope and struggle, strength and weakness at the same time, because while we are holding on to what's in our hands, we are still in the hand of the Creator and the giver of life. We remember the truth and we lean into it. I remember that Jesus is in it all, no matter how I feel or what I'm going through, that He is in it all. This next poem is called You're in It All. It goes like this. The wind is turning from warm to cool, sweeping in to send summer away, and I pray that it'll stay for one more day. But in the wrestling and the wonder of the change, I'll sit still to see that you're in it all. How beautiful it is to believe that you're in it all. Before the leaves turn from green to brown, I'll wander alone below the setting sun, stepping through shadows as I listen to the great silence and sounds of the world as I leave behind and wander ahead. And I feel like I'm always leaving something or someone behind and wandering ahead. Past the present, one foot in front of the other, and I believe I'm walking forward straight into shore and uncertain fallen forgiveness, sleepless nights, and memories of warm summer sunlight. Time keeps moving, and I'm starting to think that I can't keep up, and I'm trying to be right where I am. I'm trying to unwrap the present and cherish it like a fleeting summer day, and I'm trying to remember that through it all, spring to fall, and the months and moments between, that you're in it all. The second thing that I've been holding fast to. Oh, yes. By the way, all the artwork from my latest book is by an artist named Tim Bauer. He's done some really cool stuff. So if you see a piece of artwork pop up, that wasn't me. That's all him. But the second thing that I've been holding fast to over the last little while is the story of Simeon and Anna. Like when it comes to slowing down and leaning in and holding fast, I think that their stories really have something for us. Right? And so the story of Simeon, it had been revealed to him, a devout and righteous man by the Holy Spirit, that he would not see death before he had seen the Lord's Christ. What a revelation. Like, how do you begin to tell your family and friends and faith community that this is what God said to me? Right? God said, I'm going to see Jesus, right? Like, how do you handle that news? I thought like telling my family that I was going to be a poet was hard. But this guy's like, no, I'm going to see Jesus before I die. They're like, oh, okay, got it, cool, sounds great. All right, let us know. Right? And then Simeon, in these verses, he isn't just teaching us how to live by faith, but how to prepare for the uncertain and the certain. He takes his longing and roots it in the echoing reminder of God's word, trusting in the very promise of peace. What God has invited him into is beautiful and very different from the way of the world. I hope that sounds just a little bit familiar for where you're at. And perhaps Simeon felt the burden of hope as he longed to see the face of God. When we talk about hope, we talk about it a lot, especially throughout a pandemic. But hope, if you think about it, hope can be heavy. Hope can be quite heavy. Hope isn't something that we tuck in our pocket, but it is something that we get to carry together. A friend recently told me that hope is a team sport, and I really wish that I had come up with that because it sounds really nice. Hope is the full assurance of what God will do. And Lord knows that we need hope as the truth is always under attack. And when I think about Simeon, I think about how doubt works like the snake that it is in his mind, lies being whispered as the stories of fear and insecurity tangled in his head, questioning if God really told him that this was going to happen. Or this is what God asked him to do. But Simeon, he leans into it. He leans into the whisper of truth and prepares for change, for the promises of peace of God to meet us where we are today and to bring a new tomorrow. And then he gets to meet Jesus. Baby Jesus. I'm not even going to go into the Talladega Nights scene, but baby Jesus. And it happens eventually, not right away, but it happens. And I'm sure it was nothing like he thought it was going to look. But it ends with meeting the king. And then there's Anna. Anna the prophetess. And I hope that she knows that's how she is remembered. Like, I'm going to be remembered as Trevor, that one guy. And it's not even my name, right? That's just what's going to happen. But after becoming a widow, Anna did not depart from the temple, but she worshipped and fasting and prayed night and day. She slowed down. She rested in the word of the Lord. She leaned in. And she waited. And I'm sure she had those days just like Simeon, where waiting and wondering were painful, because waiting and wondering are painful. And then one day she met Jesus. The story ends with meeting Jesus. And that's what I'm holding fast to. Or maybe that's what's holding on to me. We can't skip to the good part. There is something for us in where we are. There is something for us in the waiting and the wandering and the wondering. Isn't there? Going back to the question of how you're feeling, I think that it's only fair that I give you my answer for how I'm feeling. And yeah, we've gone over this. You've already met Tanner, but it's true. Like, that's how I feel most of the time. Like, to be honest, I'm all over the place. Does anybody else kind of like feel that way? You're just like, I feel like we've got one, right? I just feel like I'm all over the place. And it's true. There are some days where life couldn't be better. Like yesterday was a fantastic day. I'm attributing that to sunshine and human beings and people saying hi to me. It was very nice. Thank you for doing that. And then there are days where I just struggled to keep it all together. And to be fair, I didn't really have much to begin with. But now life is getting better, but the last 2 years have been hard. And I feel like that's like the understatement of the pandemic. Like, it's been hard. Like, has it? It's been more than that, my friend. And they've been hard for all of us, right? But when talking about how we are feeling and what we're going through, we cannot measure up our lives or our pain or our problems to that of other people. It's not helpful, it's not healthy, and we certainly need to remove "it could be worse" from our vocabulary. If you've ever said this to anybody, you need to go apologize to them, because that's not a very helpful response. How are you doing? Oh, things aren't good, but it could be worse. Oh, thank you for that. Awesome. Now I feel seen and loved and valued. Appreciate it. Yeah, of course, like the fire could have been bigger, the loss could have been greater, and the pain could have been deeper, but it could have been worse has never been a good response. Someone said that to me the other day, and I was like, oh, thanks. And I just like walked away. I don't have time for this. You don't want to be here either. Anyways, as I look back over the last, this guy's kind of rude, a little bit. But as I look back on the last 2 years, I see waiting, I see wandering, and I see wondering. Plans postponed and eventually canceled. Family health scares, choosing poetry as a career, dreams that we've had to bury and dig up and bury. My wife and I, we've had to mourn life we thought that we would have, mourn the life that we thought that we would have, and my body no longer looks like it did, which, again, not much to begin with, but we all get dealt a different hand. My mental health has been this wooden roller coaster. You guys been on a wooden roller coaster before? Like, you just like feel it for like a year after that. Like, that's why chiropractor like is a real thing. They're like, you've been on a wooden roller coaster? Come in line. We need you. The joy of growing and thriving became the fear of tomorrow and the constant calling of what ifs and what's next. The days of a vibrant faith seem to be like in my rearview mirror, but I know that the best is yet to come. And through it all, like praying, something that I love to do, became more and more difficult. But I've learned that an honest groan is a beautiful prayer. And I've learned how being silent and still is a form of worship. And I've learned to write through the heaviness and the questions and hope and everything in between. Every week I get to receive messages from people all over the world, people who have found my writing and decided that they would stick along with it. And most of the messages I get are of heartache, seasons of waiting and pain. I received a message this morning from somebody who just got diagnosed with cancer. There's divorce, infertility, loneliness, struggles with mental health, life not being the way we thought it would be, and the weight that comes with that. And I'm sure it's very similar to the context and the places where you're in, where somebody says, this is what's happening in my life. And you don't say it could be worse. You don't say that, remember? But you hear their story and it sucks. It's just nothing but heartbreak after heartbreak. It's all heavy. But like hope, we get to carry it together. I want to share with you a poem called, a poem about prayer and the frustrations of not knowing. It's a poem called Waiting, Wandering, and Wondering, and it goes like this. I'm beginning to wonder if you can hear me. I have whispered and yelled and sat silent and everything in between. I have flip-flopped my thumbs left over right and right over left, thinking maybe if my hands were folded the right way, you would hear what I have been trying to say. I have closed my eyes and thought so tight that I could feel the veins in my face become visible. I have confessed at stoplights, cried out in the middle of sleepless nights, and have wrestled spite with all of my might, and nothing feels quite right. And like it says, I have prayed without ceasing, and my hands, they are sore from releasing, or at least they've tried. And if my thoughts are prayers, then I cannot stop praying. I've been wandering around in the waiting, hopefully anticipating, but I'm still here wondering and waiting and hopefully anticipating for your answer to arrive. Except for the other day. We didn't talk, or at least I didn't talk to you. And I didn't want to, and it wasn't because I was angry. Although I was, and you knew that. Then it wasn't because I was worried, although I was, and you knew that too. I was scared. I'm scared. Scared of the potential what if and what now, the constant questioning of why and how, terrified of deconstructing dreams and resetting reality, fearful of failing to be faithful through the fire, and I'm tired. And life was much easier when I was a young boy, but now that I'm older, I am struggling to see through the pain and uncertainty with hope and joy. But through it all, somehow, some way you're working beauty together with my waiting. Intertwining peace with patience, time with grace, sitting by my side in this unsettled space. And today, I pray as I wait and wonder that you'll keep me from going under. And may I remain hopeful and patient and ready. And may you give me the faith to wait and wonder. And your way is for the better, even if it is taking forever. And that's what I've been holding on to. Oh, thanks. That's the truth that I'm holding on to. The truth that is moving me to keep going, to go on. That your way is for the better, even if it is taking forever. And for all the pandemic has changed for us, for me it gave me a space to reflect on who I was becoming. And for me the pandemic drastically changed my way of living, which further impacted my future. One afternoon I read a poem by Mary Oliver, fantastic poet, and she asked this question in her poem The Summer Day, and the question is, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? What do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And had you asked me this question in middle school, I would have told you that I was going to play in the NBA. Had you asked, did you laugh? You laughed, okay. All right, yeah. We talked about this yesterday. Had you asked me this in high school, I would have told you that I'd be a youth leader and a husband and a father. Had you asked me this in college, I would have told you that I would be poor. Shout out to Concordia. Had you asked me this in theology, okay, we resonate? Got it. All right. Had you asked me this in a theology class or at church, I would have shared the Great Commission. For what it's worth, that's the right answer. But with all that has happened and continues to happen, the waiting, the wandering, and the wondering, my answer, it seems to be changing. This is a poem called What I'll Do Today, and it goes like this. Mary Oliver once asked, what do you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? And I don't know. I don't know what I'll do with my one wild and precious life, but today I'll enjoy being alive. I'll open the window and feel the wind blow through. I'll turn off my phone and find peace in the unknown. I'll thank God for grace and linger just a little bit longer after she kisses my face. And during the day, I'll sit beneath the glow of the sunshine, and at nights, we'll pour just a little bit more wine. I'll even write a few lines that don't rhyme. Today, I'll be my full self. I'll be me. Today, I can only be me. And today, like Jim Valvano once said, there are 3 things everyone should do every day. Laugh, think, and have your emotions move you to tears. And that's what I'll do today. That's what I'll do with my one wild and precious life. What will I do with my one wild and precious life? For me, I'm coming to see that I'll slow down, I'll lean in, I'll hold fast, and I'll keep going. I'll go on. And for me, this looks like walking with Jesus. It's a lot like saying, I don't know, clinging to grace, inviting you to the goodness and glory of God, laughing and crying and thinking every day, and asking God to hold me close as I move forward. With my one wild and precious life, I have come to see that I want to live something quite ordinary. And the word ordinary, it used to terrify me. For most of my life, I feared that this is what my life would become, ordinary. As a teenager, I would lie awake until the early hours of the morning wondering if this life of mine would have lasting impact or if I would just be easily forgotten. Selfishly, I worried that I would be a remembered name worthy of a statue or street name or even a Wikipedia page. And in high school, the acronym YOLO, you only live once, became very popular. It plagued the halls of my high school, attaching to our adolescent minds, acting like lice as it spread across our school's campus. And these 4 letters found their way into our conversations, into our psyche, changing our view of the world and ourselves. You only live once led me to believe that I had to become something more than myself, to grab hold of this life and leave a lasting impression on the earth. I couldn't shake wanting to stand out, to be a somebody, to be remembered. I wanted to be known and applauded by the world like the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. His birthday yesterday, so if you didn't get a wish him a happy birthday, just let him know when you see him. Or I wanted to be like the Fresh Prince, Will Smith. Oh, man. Or like my 8th grade hero, the Fonz. I know. I'm not that old, but we had TV Land, okay? So Nick at Night as well, and I loved the Fonz. This was my hero. In middle school, I went through this super big Happy Days phase. I'd turn on the lights by snapping and casually saying a drawn-out hey to girls, just like the Fonz would, to see if they would go out with me. They didn't. I even tried to convince my mom to let me get a leather jacket just like Fonzie wore, but there's never a good time to wear a leather jacket in Florida. Except for Bike Week. Anyways, which clearly not part of that. Beneath my want-to-be Fonz exterior grew and groaned a lie that I needed to live a constant life of excitement, void of boring and empty of the mundane. I thought in order for my life to be significant, to be far from ordinary, it had to be like a movie full of one-liners, first kisses, breakthroughs, and mountaintop moments, just like the Fonz. By the grace of God, something changed along the way. And my days of dreaming about being remembered as a somebody they're behind me. No longer do I equate ordinary with insignificant or believe that I need to have a street named after me or to have a significant or meaningful life. I'm not sure when the change took place, but I'm glad that it did. Maybe it was the silence of a sunset or a Sunday message of mercy. Maybe it was me realizing that I am one of 7 billion people. Or maybe I finally grew still enough to realize that this life, that all of this is not about me. And maybe it was realizing beauty, goodness, and joy are already right in front of me. Maybe it was realizing that I'm going to die one day. But I also realized and began to believe that words like ordinary and insignificant are not part of God's vocabulary. I've come to learn that life is many things, but it is certainly this slow becoming, this beautiful unfolding. And as I continue to navigate this life, I'm beginning to see that there is something beautiful about the day-to-day, the becoming to be, the steps forward and the steps back, the getting up, the continuing, the falling, the running, the asking, the wondering, the discovering, all of the things. Significance has never been based on who others say you are or what the world may call you, but significance and worth are found in the one who's found you. And he found us. He found me, ordinary me. Grace upon grace for a boy like me, and that's really just who I want to be. I want to be me. The me that he created me to be. The person who was constantly being changed by grace and moved by mercy, and I want to live an ordinary life. A simple life. Something small, something hidden, something different than I imagined. But something meaningful. I want to do the dishes and make my bed and mow the lawn. I want to play Wordle in the morning. I want to let my phone's battery drain and see that I am still full. I want to say I didn't see that when someone asked me about the latest scandal or news story or tragedy. I want to learn how to make something with my hands, like a bookcase or a table, or like even just like a really good sandwich, I want to get on my knees and pray and say amen with confidence. I want to walk a little slower, live a little deeper. I want to keep my family and friends close and worry far from away. I want to be a person of peace and rest and love. I want to build a campfire and invite you over for a nightcap. I want to walk with the one who calls me his. That's all that I want. An ordinary, simple life. No longer am I motivated by comfort or wealth or success or fame, but faithfulness is the reason. Paul shows us this. Simeon and Anna taught us this too. Lately, in the early hours of a new day, I've been saying the 3 words I joked about earlier, that God is here. And it's kind of weird to say out loud, but I'll wake up, I'll walk out to the kitchen, and I'll just kind of whisper that God is here. Just this little reminder that He is. And again, it is a little weird, but you should try it sometime. But He's here with us. He got us here, and with Him we keep going. That He has met me with the rising sun and welcomed me into a new day. That He has called me by name, given me grace, and invited us to live a life of love. That God is here with me. Just ordinary me. I'm not alone. I'm not unknown. I am not forgotten, but I am with God, and God is with me. After all, ordinary isn't meaningless or insignificant or futile or empty or forgotten. Ordinary is quite significant. To close, I want to share with you a poem called Go On. And it kind of like recaps everything we've kind of talked about. But I wrote this one afternoon, and I really liked it. And then I shared it with somebody, and they're like, I don't really like it. And I was like, okay. That was the whole conversation. Go on. Wake up early. Make the same cup of black coffee. Put a piece of bread in the toaster. Toast it until it's golden brown. And not a second earlier. I know. It's hard to wait. But wait. It's almost ready. Smear Land O'Lakes butter across the top. And don't be stingy, because life is too short to be stingy. Don't worry about your phone. You don't need your phone to eat breakfast. You don't need your phone to thank God. You don't need your phone to sip coffee. You don't need your phone to enjoy the last bite of toast soaked in butter. It's a perfect bite. Say amen. Touch your toes, or try, or tell them that you're going to get them in heaven. Go for a walk if you want the same walk that you did yesterday. As you go, walk a little slower. Wave to the children, pick up trash. Smile, always remember to smile. Don't be creepy, but smile. Look up at the sky. It's still there. It was there yesterday too. Did you see it? God made the sky. God made the clouds. God made the sun. God made the wind. God made the birds. You can wave to them too. You can feed them too. See the trees? You don't need your phone to look at the trees. They're changing and changing, just like you, becoming season after season, growing through the storms, swaying in the sunlight. Look at the trees and remember how they came to be. Like your faith, it all started with a little seed, and how beautiful it is to believe. You don't need your phone to believe. Do the day. As you go, don't forget the grace that got you here. Remember mercy. Remember love. Remember that phone call that you have at 3 p.m. You do need your phone for that phone call. Remember that thing that you need to do, but remember that thing that you need to do will not change your worth. Remember to take the chicken out of the freezer so that it can thaw, because you cannot have chicken tacos for dinner without chicken. Remember to drink water. Remember hope. Remember faithfulness. Remember her birthday is coming up. It is. And I lost my spot. Where'd it go? Remember, her birthday is coming up. There is always something and someone to celebrate. You are also someone worth celebrating. But this life isn't about you. I know. It gets confusing. Life is confusing, but it's also worth celebrating. Remember peace. Remember self-control. Remember to call. Tell them you love them. Tell them you miss them. Remember kindness. Remember goodness. Mow the lawn. Pull the weeds. Plant the seeds. Remember joy. Remember patience. Look up at the sky. It's still there. Remember the trees. Remember all of this is worth staying for. And at night, step outside one last time. Watch the sun fall into the silence of the horizon, a daily reminder that we were made to rest and rise and repeat. Rest and rise and repeat. Feel the light of the setting sun on your skin. You're alive. You're covered in grace. You are known. You are loved. I hate when people tell me that you are known and that you are loved. You're known. You're loved. The stars, they shine above you. You are seen. You are significant. From your head to the toes that you cannot touch. From your insides where the coffee mixes with golden brown toast to your outside where the light hugs your skin like an old friend saying, hello. From your waking to your sleeping. From your wondering to your realizing. From your season to your season. From your first breath to your last. You are significant. And you don't need your phone to be significant. Go on. Thanks. Well, thanks for hanging with me and letting me share a couple of poems. I hope that you enjoyed our time together. I have a couple of books. I have a book over here. This is my third book. I have 2 other books out. This is my first book called I'm All Over the Place. I put this out in the pandemic called As You Go, and then this one came out in November. But yeah, if you want to follow along with my work on the internet, just type in Written to Speak or go to writtentospeak.com, and you can check that out. I have a book coming out with CPH this June, a book of prayers and poems. But yeah, do you guys have any questions for me? I know I just kind of talked a lot, and no questions might be a good thing or a really bad thing. But yeah, do you have a question?
Generally, just I think that I will probably want to use some copies of your book to use in a Bible study. That we're moving from minor prophets to the next thing. Usually it's like a Francis Chan or somebody else, but I like the poems. I think I'd like to use that. So where do I go to?
Yeah, if you go to writtentospeak.com, I do bulk orders as well. I should probably say this as well, I travel and speak and do nights of poetry and storytelling. I've done that all across the United States, so it would be mostly like poetry and short stories, kind of in between, kind of connecting themes. I had a conversation with somebody yesterday, and they were asking, well, why poetry? And it wasn't like this is what I always wanted to do with my life, but I have seen how people can be extremely impacted by a sermon or by a song, and there's also people who are highly impacted by just words themselves in poetry. Like when we read through the Bible, there is a chunk of it where it is poetry. And so I want to be able to write something honest and hopeful with people who are saying, I feel like this, I feel insignificant, I feel lost, I feel confused, people who are wrestling with mental health. I want to be able to be somebody who can come in and say, I feel that way too. As a 32-year-old man who doesn't have a lot of it together, I feel that way. So I'll visit schools, kindergarten all the way through high school. I'll share fun poems with them. I don't read them these poems because they're just like, this is not, you're not, just stop. But I have poems where it's like, Dan the man, kick the can, and they really enjoy that. And it's kind of torture for me, but I enjoy it. So if you're looking for someone to come share poetry, speak, or have an event, I would love to talk with you more about that. I have a couple of things coming up. I'll be in Milwaukee this next week. I'll speak at Concordia, Wisconsin, and at a high school, and then do a young poets contest for a bunch of middle school kids. So would love to talk to you more about everything, because this is my job. Yes?
I just want to comment. Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm.
That is not easy, and I think, I'm a pastor's wife, so I think this is as powerful, if not more powerful than a sermon. And I really appreciate what you do.
Well, thanks for saying that. Thank you.
Curious to know, like, your writing rhythms.
Yeah, my writing rhythms, it kind of depends on the day, right? So this is my full-time job, is writing, releasing books, booking events, traveling, all that kind of stuff. So it's about 10% writing and 90% wondering about, am I going to make it till next month? But for me, my writing routine usually is I want to wake up early, turn off all of my distractions, and when I write, I am writing, I'm not editing. So I'm basically, if you think about it as like Legos in a bin, I am just dumping out the Legos. I'm just getting them and I'm putting them on the floor. Like, that's the writing process. And then the editing process is going through and building them, right? As a writer, and I think this is true probably for other areas of our lives, the delete button is possibly our best friend. Like, if you can go through and delete, and if you're like, oh, I really love this line, drag it, put it somewhere else. But like, for me, I have found that the delete button is my best friend. It's hard for me to say apparently, but it is my best friend. So it is taking that time to say, I am going to sit down and write. There were 2 nights last week where I told my wife, I was like, hey, I'm going to have a writing session tonight from 6 to 9. Like, I'm just going to be in my office and I'm going to write. And she said, okay. She said it really fast, and I was like, oh no. But it's fine. It's fine. So, yeah. Any other questions for me about anything? Yes?
You do a lot of research. I know you do a lot of reading, but you do a lot of research for your work, or is it just a flow?
It is. It's a different kind of research. So, like when writing a sermon, right? So you're digging into like what others have said, commentaries, and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to poetry, the research that I'm doing is it's more so I'm going to share it with a friend and say, what do you think about this? Does this resonate with you? Does this connect with you? So I'll put a lot of stuff online, and if it's like a line or two and it's well received, then I understand that other people feel this way too. So it's a different kind of research, but it is like, hardly do I ever write something where I'm like, this is it. It has to go through a couple of different channels before that's it. It's done. So now there are some things like Chase just asked me to write a poem for y'all's church about Easter Sunday, and so it's and y'all's theme is communion, right? Kind of throughout. Yeah, so I did a bunch of kind of research about like communion because I didn't want to get my words wrong. Because can you imagine talking about communion wrong in a Lutheran church? Yikes! Don't want to be that guy. I'm already weird enough. Tight pants and poetry. So get communion wrong, and that's 3 strikes. So I'm just
remember a lot.
Yeah, I did. Well, they taught anyways. But so there's like I did too. Okay, stop. But there is the remember exchange. Yeah. So there's a lot of research that goes into it because I also don't want to put fluff out. And sometimes you can put fluff out and it just be fluff. And sometimes it can appear to be fluff with depth, right? Like my poem about cake for breakfast. Well, I wrote that in like 30 seconds, right? But I love it. And it makes sense, and I shared it with people, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense too, but that's kind of how we talk about how we feel sometimes. I feel sad, but I'm going to make a joke so you kind of forget about it. That's how it is. So there is a lot of research that goes into it, but I've seen the beauty of what poetry can do and how it can change people's perceptions on emotions and faith and how those walk side by side and how faith always just is like, it's beautiful. Let me tell you one story, and then you can leave if you want to, because I'm sure there's more food. I did a night of poetry and storytelling in Houston, Texas. Is anyone from Houston? Yeah, right. So Houston, there's like, people there are tough, right? Some people there are tough. Rude. Sorry. I've had not enough coffee and too much. Yeah, that's a good one. We'll talk, okay. But I was doing a night of poetry, and there's a guy in the very back, and he's a big guy, and he sat like this the whole time. Just like stared me down the whole time. And I was like, oh, this is bad. Like, this is the worst thing. I picked the wrong career. I should have gone into oil just like you, sir. And the night is over, and I'm talking with people and signing books, and he is still sitting there and just staring. And I was like, it's going to happen. Like, I'm going to be... This is the end. And everyone's like leaving, and then he finally comes up to me and he just starts crying. And I was like, oh. He's like, I needed that. And he said, you can't stop doing this. And so I keep doing it because I'm afraid he's going to find me. Yeah.
I just have to say, God bless your wife. Because
Amen.
you're married to like an artistic person, and like your travel, like she makes it happen too.
Oh, she's
I know
great.
You know that.
Yeah, she's wonderful. So my wife, Sarah, she works at Camp Arcadia in Michigan. She does communications and donor relations stuff. So we spend most of the summers up there. So I'm a 32-year-old snowbird. We go from Nashville to Arcadia every summer. But it's a beautiful place, and so it's fun to be a team. And she's super supportive, and yeah. Anyways, thanks for allowing me to hang with y'all. If you want to grab a book, they're $12, or you can get them online. But thanks for being here. It really means a lot.